Good evening, I'm Farhana Sheikh. Our top stories for tonight: Thailand demands apology from Cambodia over landmine blast, and Russia expresses readiness to resume peace talks with Ukraine. All that and more coming up on AWANI International. Our top story for tonight: Thailand has demanded an apology from Cambodia after accusing its neighbor of laying new landmines that injured its soldiers, a day after Bangkok suspended a ceasefire brokered just weeks ago. Cambodia denies accusations of laying new mines, including one that exploded on Monday. The Thai army said that the mine explosion in Sisaket province left one soldier with a severe leg injury and another suffering from chest pains. Thai Foreign Ministry spokesperson Nikonde Balankura told reporters that the kingdom wants Cambodia to apologize, saying it wants the facts established and measures put in place to prevent future incidents. A Cambodian government spokesman declined to comment, though the Defense Ministry had said it remains committed to working with Thailand under the truce. Now, the ceasefire brokered by Malaysia and the United States aimed to secure a lasting end to hostilities after July's border clashes killed at least 43 people and displaced more than 300,000 civilians on both sides. Thailand and Cambodia have disputed parts of their border for over a century, but July's fighting was triggered by accusations of Cambodian landmines injuring Thai troops. Now, Russia says it is ready to resume peace talks with Ukraine in Istanbul, the first such offer in months. Russian state news agency TASS cited Foreign Ministry official Alexei Polishchuk that Moscow is prepared to restart negotiations in Turkey, where the last face-to-face meeting was held. Moscow now claims that the ball is in Ukraine's court, noting that Kyiv has yet to respond to the invitation. Kyiv had earlier proposed an August summit between President Volodymyr Zelensky and Russian President Vladimir Putin. The Kremlin responded, saying Putin is open to the idea but will only meet Zelensky in Moscow, a condition Ukraine rejected. Now, Russia and Ukraine officials meet for their third round of peace talks in Istanbul in July this year, agreeing on the exchange of prisoners and civilians, though an agreement for a permanent ceasefire and lasting peace is far from reach. Stay with us for more updates right after this break.
Dali, dia dah tak jumpa anak dia selama 10 tahun.
Siapa dia, Puan? Sebab saya tak sedar mara.
Aku sendiri yang akan bawa kau jumpa dengan anak kau.
Buli di sekolah. Isu ini bukan perkara baru.
Buli tertakluk kepada perbuatan agresif secara fizikal.
Apa sebenarnya jerabu punca utama yang menyumbang kepada masalah ini serta kesannya kepada kesihatan kita?
Mereka akan mengalami iritasi kepada mata. Selain itu, iritasi kepada saluran pernafasan.
Welcome back. Vietnam is expected to sign a reciprocal trade agreement with the United States soon. According to Deputy Prime Minister Bui Thanh Son, a new round of negotiations is underway in Washington as both sides look to strengthen economic ties. Back in October, both sides agreed to finalize a trade deal within weeks.
Under the proposed agreement, the U.S. would keep a 20% tariff on Vietnamese imports. A Vietnamese delegation is in Washington this week for talks to finalize the trade deal, focusing on possible tariff exemptions for key exports like coffee and greater market access for U.S. goods such as cars and farm produce. At the U.S.-Vietnam Business Summit in Hanoi, Son urged American companies to support an upcoming visit by President To Lam, Vietnam's bid for U.S. market economy status, and the lifting of restrictions on high-tech exports. For the first 10 months of the year, Vietnam recorded a $111 billion trade surplus with the U.S.
UNICEF says vital supplies, including syringes for child vaccinations and bottles for baby formula, are being blocked from entering Gaza by Israel, hampering aid efforts into the war-ravaged territory. The agency says 1.6 million syringes and solar-powered vaccine fridges have been held in customs since August, as Israel classifies them as dual-use items that could have military uses.
Israel has denied blocking such supplies, saying it is ensuring that aid isn't diverted by Hamas and that alternative solutions have been offered. UNICEF has launched a vaccination campaign to reach 40,000 children under 3 who missed routine vaccine shots against polio, measles and pneumonia during the 2-year war. The agency also said nearly 1 million bottles of ready-to-use infant formula and spare parts for water trucks are still not being allowed into Gaza. The October 10th truce was meant to allow a surge of aid into Gaza, but much of the 2 million displaced population still isn't getting enough help.
France says it will help the Palestinian Authority draft a constitution for a future Palestinian state. President Emmanuel Macron says France and the Palestinian Authority, which governs parts of the Israeli-occupied West Bank, are forming a joint committee to prepare the document.
He explained that the committee will address all legal aspects, including constitutional, institutional and organizational matters. Macron added that the process will build on an existing draft presented by President Mahmoud Abbas and aims to establish the full conditions necessary for the creation of a state of Palestine. France will also provide more than $116 million in humanitarian aid to Gaza next year. Paris' recent decision to recognize a Palestinian state, joined by Britain, Canada and Australia, brings them in line with over 140 nations supporting Palestinian statehood. US President Donald Trump criticized the move, saying it would serve as a reward to Hamas.
Australia and Indonesia have signed a new security treaty committing both nations to consult each other if either faces a threat. The agreement was approved on Wednesday by Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese and Indonesian President Prabowo Subianto during his first state visit to Australia.
This treaty will commit Australia and Indonesia to consult at a leader and ministerial level on a regular basis on matters of security, to identify and undertake mutually beneficial security activities, and if either or both countries' security is threatened, to consult and consider what measures may be taken, either individually or jointly, to deal with those threats. This is a watershed moment in the Australia-Indonesia relationship.
Security ties between the two neighbours have strengthened under Albanese's government, which made Jakarta his first international stop after being re-elected in May. Australia has been boosting defence cooperation in the region, signing a mutual security pact with neighbouring Papua New Guinea just last month. Chinese President Xi Jinping welcomes Spain's King Felipe VI in Beijing, marking his first state visit to China and the first by a Spanish monarch in 18 years. Xi says China is ready to work with Spain to build a more resilient and dynamic comprehensive strategic partnership and enhance both nations' global influence. During their meeting, Xi and King Felipe witnessed the signing of several cooperation agreements to strengthen bilateral ties. China is Spain's largest trading partner outside the EU, with bilateral trade totaling $48.6 billion in 2023. Madrid has also deepened their economic engagement with China since the EU imposed tariffs on Chinese-made electric vehicles in June 2024, sending Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez to Beijing 3 times in the past years. Beijing, meanwhile, is seeking to ease trade tensions with the bloc as US President Donald Trump's tariffs weigh on Chinese exports. Last week, China proposed resuming investment talks with the EU that have been frozen since 2021. Moscow says it will resume nuclear testing if other nuclear power do so. Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov adds that the Kremlin is ready to discuss with Washington on President Donald Trump's allegations that Russia conducted secret underground nuclear tests.
He also dismissed the claims, saying the US can verify through the global seismic monitoring system whether any tests took place. Tensions between the world's two largest nuclear powers have escalated after another attempt to end the war in Ukraine, with Russia recently announcing that it tested its nuclear-powered weapons systems. Trump earlier this month accused both Russia and China of conducting secret nuclear tests after abruptly cancelling a proposed summit with President Vladimir Putin on Ukraine. Lavrov insisted the two issues were unrelated, but said Moscow remains open to a potential meeting between Putin and Trump.
Venezuela is preparing its armed forces in response to what it calls an imperialist threat from the U.S. following the arrival of a U.S. aircraft carrier strike group in the Caribbean Sea. Land, air, naval and reserve forces have begun joint exercises under orders from President Nicolas Maduro alongside police, militias and citizens units.
The move comes after the U.S. Navy confirmed that America's largest warship, the USS Gerald R. Ford, had entered the region, accompanied by 2 guided missile destroyers and a command ship. The U.S. said its operations in the Caribbean are aimed at combating drug trafficking, but Caracas has accused Washington of using the mission as cover to collapse Maduro's government, a claim U.S. officials deny. Tensions between the two countries have escalated since Trump's return for a second term. In recent weeks, the U.S. government has also surged troops to areas near the Caribbean, including El Salvador, Puerto Rico and Panama, for training exercises and other operations.
Malaysia says the newly adopted ASEAN Declaration on the Right to a Safe, Clean, Healthy and Sustainable Environment is a key first step. But real change depends on action. Adopted at the 47th ASEAN Summit, the declaration marks a symbolic step towards regional environmental action, though it carries no legal weight, reflecting ASEAN's diverse political systems, says former Environment Minister Nik Nazmi Nik Ahmad.
As much as we would like to think that ASEAN is another EU, it is not. Okay, and you know, it's very different. In ASEAN, for example, we still have one government is still an absolute monarchy. We have various levels of elections. We have countries that have never changed governments. And we have Myanmar, which is another outlier. And we have a communist state, as in Vietnam. So it is very, very different. So you can't compare it with the EU, where pretty much, I mean, not to say that they're perfect, but they pretty much are democratic countries on their own, and they have common institutions like the parliament. I think now the next step is actually to make use of it. There's no use to have a so-called perfect or idealized declaration and then for it to just fall by the side. So I think for the civil society, for people like Greenpeace, so on and so forth, is for you to make use of what we have and try to push the boundaries of the laws that we have, of the rights that is being interpreted at the courts in various countries, so that we can fill in that void and we push it further and further.
For ASEAN Intergovernmental Commission on Human Rights Chair Edmund Bond, the next challenge is turning the declaration into a concrete ASEAN action plan that holds governments and corporations accountable for sustainability.
I can tell you now, during the negotiations, the 4 countries that were very together were Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia and Philippines on this declaration from the start. We actually need technical experts. We know the cases. We actually know the case studies. We know the complaints. If you tell me mercury is a problem, if you tell me nickel is a problem, give me the solution. How do I work this into a plan of action that is acceptable, that ASEAN can work on?
That concludes AWANI International for tonight. Stay with us as we track the strategies and power shifts shaping the new global order. For more updates, visit international.astroawani.com and follow us on our social media accounts. I am Farhana Sheikh. Thank you for watching and good night.